Welcome to this lecture video. In today's lecture video, we'll be discussing about polar plot. The topic which is covered in today's lecture video is a numerical on polar plot. So let us consider this numerical to understand how to plot a polar plot. They have given a open loop transfer function g of s into h of s equals 1 divided by 1 plus t of ts, where t is a constant. We need to obtain polar plot of this for omega is equal to 0, omega is equal to 1 divided by t, omega is equal to 10 divided by t, and omega is equal to infinity. So for these particular omega values, they have asked us to plot a polar plot. First thing, whenever transfer function is given to us, open loop transfer function is given to us, the first step in polar plot is substitute s is equal to j omega in frequency domain. S is equal to j omega. So when we substitute s is equal to j omega, we get g of j omega into h of j omega equals 1 divided by 1 plus j omega into t. And later, using that equation, whatever we have got, we'll be writing an equation with respect to magnitude, and we'll be writing an equation with respect to phase angle. How to write those, we'll understand in detail. So when we substitute s is equal to j omega in the equation which is given to us, we will be getting g of j omega into h of j omega equals 1 divided by 1 plus t of j omega. So what we do is we convert whatever equation we have got, we'll be writing in form of a plus ib form, complex number. So if we observe this 1 over here, which is given here, can be written as 1 plus 0j, a plus ib form. So when we are writing in a plus ib form, because b value in the equation which is given to us is equal to 0, we just have a real part. So 1 plus 0 j divided by this anyhow is in complex number form, 1 plus j omega into t. Next, after this, we'll try to find the magnitude of it. To find magnitude, we'll take modulus of the obtained equation. So when we have to get the magnitude of it, modulus of it, what we do is for complex number, we'll be using this formula, a square plus b square formula. The magnitude of any complex number can be found out by this formula, a square plus b square. So for our numerator, we already have a is equal to 1 and b is equal to 0. So for our numerator, the value will be equal to 1 square plus 0 square. So 1 square plus 0 square will be equal to root of 1. Root of 1 is equal to 1. The same thing is being written over here. Similarly, for the denominator part. In the denominator part, if we observe, the equation which we have is 1 plus j omega t. So this is again in a plus ib form. So when we have to find the modulus of it, we'll be using the formula root of a square plus b square. Here, the a value is 1 and b value is omega t. Omega t is our b value. So root of a square plus b square will be equal to 1 square plus omega square t square. Omega into t the whole square, which is nothing but omega square into t square, which is under the root. The same thing is being written over here. So this is our magnitude plot, magnitude equation. So m will be equal to 1 divided by root of 1 square plus omega square into t square. So after this, we need to find out the phase angle of it, the angle. So the angle of it can be found out by using the formula phi is equal to tan inverse of b divided by a. Tan inverse of b by a. So when we have a complex number which is in the form a plus ib, so we can obtain its angle by using the formula phi is equal to tan inverse of b divided by a. Let us consider the numerator part. In the numerator part, what is the equation? We have 1 plus 0j. That means b value is 0, a value is 1. So phi value will be equal to tan inverse of b value is 0. Tan inverse of 0 divided by a value is 1. So tan inverse of 0 divided by 1. The same thing is been written over here in the numerator part. Anyhow, 0 by anything, 0 by 1 is 0. So tan inverse of 0 is 0 degrees. Let us come to the denominator part, divided by. So in the denominator part, if we observe, the equation which we have is 1 plus j omega t. That means a value is 1 and b value is omega t. So when we use the formula, phi is equal to tan inverse of b divided by a. In place of b, we have to substitute it as omega t. In place of a, we'll be substituting as 1. So tan inverse of omega t divided by 1, which is nothing but tan inverse of omega t. Now, because in the numerator we have 0, and if we send this angle towards the numerator, we get a negative sign. Hence, the angle phi will be equal to minus tan inverse of omega t. Now, from this, we have got what is magnitude plot and what is, magnitude equation and what is phase angle equation. Now, for this magnitude equation and phase angle equation, we will be substituting for different values of omega and we will be obtaining different values for magnitude and phase angle. Those will be plotted in our polar plot. If we observe, initially we'll be giving omega is equal to 0. Next, we'll be giving omega is equal to 1 divided by t. Next, we'll be giving omega is equal to 10 divided by t and omega is equal to infinity. For these values, let us see how the magnitude and phase angle varies. Initially, when omega is equal to 0. So when omega value is equal to 0, the magnitude will be equal to 1 divided by, in place of omega, substitute as 0. 1 plus 0 square into t square, it will be 0. This will be equal to 1 divided by root of 1. So root of 1 is anyhow equal to 1. 1 by 1 is 1. So the magnitude which we get when omega is equal to 0 is 1. Similarly, for phase angle. So phase angle, we already know the formula which we have got, minus tan inverse of omega t. So in place of omega, substitute as 0. So tan inverse of 0. Phi is equal to tan inverse of 0. So anyhow, we already know that tan inverse of 0 is always 0. So phi will be equal to 0. So when omega is equal to 0, magnitude is 1 and phi value is 0. The same thing is written in this table over here. So when omega is equal to 0, magnitude is equal to 1, phi value is equal to 0. Next, let us consider what happens when omega is equal to 1 divided by t. So when omega is equal to 1 divided by t, so for omega value is equal to 1 divided by t, we get the magnitude as, magnitude will be equal to, in place of omega, substitute it as 1 divided by t. So 1 plus omega square means 1 divided by t square. 1 square divided by t square, 1 by t square, multiplied by t square will be as it is. Next. So if we observe this, t square and t square will get cancelled. And finally, we'll be arriving at the equation. This will be equal to 1 divided by root of 1 plus 1. So this will be 1 divided by root of 2. So the magnitude when omega is equal to 1 divided by t, the magnitude is 1 divided by root 2. Similarly, for phase angle phi, when omega is equal to 1 divided by t, phi will be equal to tan inverse of 1 divided by t into t. We are substituting omega as 1 by t. So these two will get cancelled. So phi will be equal to tan inverse of 1. So tan inverse of 1 will be equal to minus 45 degrees. Minus tan inverse of 1. So minus tan inverse of 1 will be minus 45 degrees. Similarly, we'll find out what is the value of magnitude and phi value, magnitude value, and as well as phase angle value for omega is equal to 10 divided by t and omega is equal to infinity. We'll be getting the values as for 10 divided by t omega, 1 divided by root of 101, and angle is minus 84.2. For omega is equal to infinity, the magnitude will be 0 and phase angle will be minus 90 degrees. Now, using these values, we will be plotting polar plot. To plot polar plot, initially what we have to do is consider two axes, x-axis and y-axis, x-axis and y-axis. Initially, because we have got the phase angles as negative, we always consider clockwise direction. So 0 degrees, here will be taking as minus 90 degrees, here will be taking as minus 180 degrees, and here will be considering as minus 270 degrees. So these are the angles which we get. For example, if we have got positive angles, we would have taken this as 0 degrees, this as plus 90 degrees, this as plus 180 degrees, and this as plus 270 degrees. But since we have got the angles in negative direction, we always consider clockwise analysis: 0, minus 90 degrees, minus 180 degrees, and minus 270 degrees. Initially, according to the table which we have got initially, when omega is equal to 0, the magnitude is 1 and phase angle is 0 degrees. So when omega is equal to 0, the magnitude which we have got is 1 and the angle is 0 degrees. So exactly at 0 degrees, the magnitude which we have got is 1, and that is for omega is equal to 0. So this is the first plot which we are plotting, that is on 0 degrees. Similarly, for omega is equal to 1 divided by t, the magnitude which we have got is 1 divided by root 2, and phase angle is minus 45 degrees. So to plot minus 45 degrees over here, minus 45 degrees, take a protractor and plot minus 45 degrees. So it will be somewhere over here. This is minus 45 degrees line. So minus 45 degrees. At minus 45 degrees, the magnitude which we have got is 1 divided by root 2. So that 1 divided by root 2 corresponds to 0.707 approximately. So it will be somewhere over here. If you take a scale and if you measure it, you'll get a proper value. So it will be somewhere over here. So this value is for omega is equal to 1 divided by t. Similarly, when omega is equal to 10 divided by t, the magnitude which we have got is 1 divided by root of 101. The angle which we have got is minus 84.2. So first plot angle minus 84.2 using protractor. So minus 84.2 will be somewhere over here from the origin, minus 84.2 degrees. This is the angle which we have got, and 1 divided by 101 will be somewhere over here. Plot that. That is our magnitude. And finally, when omega is equal to infinity, the magnitude becomes equal to 0. Phi angle becomes equal to minus 90 degrees. So minus 90 degrees is over here. The magnitude with respect to that is 0. So 0 means origin somewhere over here. That means at omega is equal to infinity, the magnitude which we have got is 0. And the angle with respect to that is minus 90 degrees. Now, after plotting all these points, what we have to do is to plot polar plot from the initial value of omega is equal to 0 until the end value omega is equal to infinity. Wherever the points touch all those points and move to 0 origin, or from omega is equal to 0 to omega is equal to infinity, touch all the points which we have plotted like this. It will be plotted to 0. So this is how we plot a polar plot. I hope that you have understood this video lecture. Thank you.